Hi guys, my name is Vuvu. Welcome back to my channel. This is Vuvu Vena Reads. In case you are new on here, please do press that red subscribe button down below and join the family. If you're a returnee, a member of the fam bam, welcome back fam. I need a sip of water. Welcome back fam, and thank you for joining me once again. On today's video, as the title suggests, I'm going to read the first chapter of The Journals of He, the Beginning by J.D. Kizza. If you are curious about this book, this is a South African based author. Please do stay tuned.
So Vuvu _reads is an amazing book reviewer, also YouTuber. She reviews books on YouTube, and if I'm not mistaken, she also has a blog as well. So please, if for your connection with literature, get in touch with or follow at VUVUVENA_reads. She is based in South Africa, and I think it is also extremely important to follow literary content creators who are based outside of the West and in continental Africa, because they do a really good job of bridging the gap.
We appreciate you, Vuvu, for bringing us Turning Pages and for bringing us your BookTube channel.
You know, this is a chance for people to actually see some people that I really enjoy.
Please consider pressing the red subscribe button down below, and if you're a returnee, welcome back fam.
Vuvu, you're amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, so let's start with the cover. I absolutely love the cover. It's giving erotica, it's giving passion, you know, it's giving spice, which is absolutely something that we look forward to in romance novels. I do understand that this does fall under the romance genre. I love the font used in the cover. I do understand this might be a trilogy, so I absolutely understand it being called The Beginning. So it's The Journals of He, the Beginning by J.D. Kizza. One thing I will say though is that I wish the author's name was a little bit brighter, maybe if they'd used white, or you know, just to make it pop a little bit, because it's really hard to find. Those of you who do follow the sprints on my channel and the rest of the ladies' channels, you might have come across this author. She does support our sprints quite a lot. Her name is Jane, and on social media I think she is Jane the author, especially on Instagram. She's also on TikTok, so in case you're curious and want to connect with her, that's how you could find her. So I'm happy with the cover. I like the spine as well. Black, red and white work perfectly, so I'm very happy with this. The only thing with me with sets of books or series is that I hope that it sticks to the same style, right? The same height, size of the book, the same kind of fonts, the same kind of layout and colors, etc. That's very important. This one says it is published by Beyond the Veil Publishing. That's who the publisher is. So let me read you the synopsis. It says, during a college tour in the city, a freak accident in a campus library leads to a chance encounter between Delia and a handsome stranger. High on painkillers and with no way of reaching him, Delia's chances of reconnecting with the man are dashed until 2 years later, when fate takes her back to the place where they first met. From a quiet little town in the northwest province, Delia is thrust into the color and noise of suburban Johannesburg, where she learns to cope with the demands of independent life. A self-professed introvert, she realizes that she must open herself up to the adventure of new people and experiences in order to survive the challenges of nursing school. But then, inadvertently, Delia finds her sheltered existence rocked by her own intense curiosity and twisted desires which lead her to the mysterious secrets of him. Ooh. So, that's that, but that child, absolutely love that kind of teaser there. It says about the author, J.D. Kizza is a practicing nurse and the author of The Journals of He, which is her first novel. She began the trilogy during her years of study at the University of the Witwatersrand, drawing inspiration from her experiences there. She loves reading and writing and enjoys poetry as well as romantic and crime fiction. She lives with her family in Johannesburg. You can reach her on Instagram and Facebook on her author handle @JaneAuthor. So I understand this is gonna be a trilogy, and I have the second book. Her publicity people Visa Publicity, I think, sent this to me, so already it's keeping with the theme, right? The second one is called The Continuance, but as you can see, the writing is pretty much the same, the covers are pretty much similar, the spines are giving pretty much the same, which I'm very happy about. I haven't started reading these books, but a friend of mine, Kat, has been raving about them, and I thought to pick them up, so I bought myself this copy. The second copy was sent to me. So let's see what Jane has in store for us. I will say off the bat, oh, this one's got a prologue. You know what the rules are, right? Where there's a prologue, I will read just the prologue, but this prologue is so short, child, and I'm only saying this because the font is pretty big on these, as you can see. So maybe she'll get a reading of the prologue and the first chapter. Okay, we shall see how it goes. We shall see how it goes. But usually if there's a prologue, I only read that. I don't read chapter 1, but let's see. Let's indulge Jane. It says prologue on site. People didn't often come this high up, so I knew that it would always be quiet. The elevators were reserved for the disabled and the elderly, and so everyone else who didn't fall into those categories was challenged to take the stairs to reach whichever floor they needed to get to. Everybody else didn't have that kind of conviction, except after a long day of sitting through tedious, monotonous lectures. I had banked on this very fact when I had chosen this spot in the giant campus library, and every time it never failed. The few people that were up here were confined to the far corners of the room where the computers were, and even so, they engaged with their virtual world in near total silence. This spot was perfect for me. The ambient noise from the world beyond was muted simply by the thick wooden shelves that were packed with books on just about everything but almost everyone. By almost everyone, sorry. Please excuse, they are doing the gardening situation, okay? The table I frequented was set between two long shelves that damn near touched the ceiling. It only had space for 2 chairs on the sides because of the shelves, and I was happy with this. It invited no company. I could think and study in peace, relieved of any calls to small talk and any distractions that would come by the simple presence of another human being. That was until I first saw her. I could hear her approaching, the sound of her jeans giving her away. She didn't drag her feet, however, her footfalls gave off a quiet and almost deliberate thud as she strode in my general direction. I didn't know when I had even decided that this was a female that I was hearing. My random choice was validated when she zipped across my sideline with the sounds of her existence, moving deeper into the maze of shells. I was inclined to get up and follow her, but sense told me how stupid that would be. What was the reason, really? But even with this decision made, I found myself listening right up until I could hear nothing at all, and I wondered if she had stopped to sit down somewhere. I dragged my eyes back to the book in front of me and continued to read. Barely had I done this when I heard the sounds approaching again. Just as I lifted my head, there she was, turning down the aisle where I was. I couldn't see her face for the dark curtains of braids that hung before her. Her head tilted in an awkward angle as she perused the shelves before her at the level of her chest. She slowed her pace then, and in that moment I examined her. My immediate thought was of dark chocolate, for that was the color of her skin. She wore a light gray shirt, the sleeves long and rolled up to her elbows, paired with fading blue jeans that appeared to be ripped on the side of the right pant leg. The seams were loose at the bottom and the edges frayed and just about touching the floor, where they fell over dirty black and white canvases. She wore a single string of black beads on her right wrist and clutched a piece of paper in her fist. She was full in figure, but it seemed more from genetic predisposition than any effort on her part. And then my eyes drifted to other parts of her, as anybody's eyes undoubtedly would. The way that she stood when she stopped moving made me wonder if she was aware of what her stance. Okay. The way that she stood when she stopped moving made me wonder if she was aware of what her stance did to her ass. She had a round and rather voluptuous backside, and I found myself appreciating it. All of me was appreciating it, and I shifted in my seat. As if sensing this, she turned back the way that she had come, and I couldn't help but smile as I watched her walk away, because she did indeed have a rather perfect ass. And now I could hear her moving on the other side of the shelf, and I was tempted to offer my assistance to her. I was pretty much holding my breath as I listened to her approach the same spot on the other side of the shelf. And then several things happened at once. Somebody was running. I could hear them approaching. There was a loud jarring noise of some kind of collision. The shelf rocked suddenly, making me jump to my feet, bracing for its impact should it fall altogether. Some of the books had even slid a few inches forward, while others dropped to the carpet floor. Somebody whimpered close by, and this was followed almost immediately by the obvious sound of falling books. Somebody ran past that little hiding place of mine, but I never actually saw who it was, because it seemed everybody else was coming out of their little bubbles to converge on the other side of the shelf beside me. When I was sure that the shelf was not going to fall on me, I made my way around to see what had happened. There were already 3 people there, crowding around a 4th person who was on the floor. Books were scattered everywhere, and a quick glance showed me that one of the shelves had broken and released its contents. "Are you okay?" "Oh my god, there's so much blood." This was me approaching faster, trying to get a better look at who had fallen, and there she was, slowly sitting up, clutching her arm to her chest. I stood frozen for a hot second, seeing the bloodied bookend and the growing red stain on her shirt. Her face was obscured completely, her hair falling all over it. One of the students was asking if she could stand, to which she must have replied the affirmative, because he tucked his arm under her armpit and began to raise her slowly until she was on her feet. "Can you walk?" the other one asked. At this point, the speaker raked her fingers through the girl's hair, removing the braids from her face. The pain she was in was obvious, but even more so was the anger. And then she looked up at me with her brown eyes, and I knew that I was fucked. Ooh. That's the end of the prologue. So chapter 1 is also not so long, so I will read it. Chapter 1, Encounter. It all passed before me in a blur. It all hurt. I didn't know if it was because he was squeezing too hard or because I was indeed seeing flames. The sweater he'd wrapped around my arm had already started to soak through it, and I realized that the material was just as wrong for a wound like this. Was just all wrong for a wound like this. I'm so sorry guys, I hope the sound can still come through with the noise. I have no control over that. I hope you guys can still hear me. And I realized that the material was just all wrong for a wound like this. And maybe he had seen it too, because he was squeezing me even tighter. Somehow I was seated in a cubicle on an examination table with him in the seat before me, his large capable fingers curled around my wounded arm. He would look up at me every few seconds, but I found that I couldn't take my eyes off of him even when he caught me looking at him. But then who could blame me, really? He was just about as dark as I was, if not a shade lighter, and his eyes were hazel. I could see almost nothing else. I knew that brown was pretty much the standard shade for eyes in anyone born black, but that didn't mean that there weren't people born with eyes that were another color. Clearly he was one such person, and I wondered if I had some kind of underlying contagious disease that I didn't know about when I saw that he had my blood on his hands. He looked up at me again, and I just stared right back, which prompted him to look away again. The door slid open then and a doctor ran in, followed by 2 nurses. I had grown up around healthcare professionals, so it was easy for me to identify these people. The doctor, a young man with a practiced smile, introduced himself. I don't know if I replied in kind, but he put on a pair of gloves, as did the nurses, and only then did the stranger let me go. As the doctor peeled back the layers of the sweater, he asked me what had happened. It took me a moment to find my voice as I stared at the extent of the damage. Someone ran past me, bumped into me. I hit the shelf. It broke. I fell, landed badly on a bookend. The doctor nodded his head as he examined the long white gash on the back of my right forearm. He asked me a few more questions and went through some mild and gentle range of motion exercises. Nothing appeared to be broken, he said, but he ordered an x-ray just to be sure. He said that I'd have to get it done immediately at the nearest hospital, but I can't. The doctor looked at me. It all seemed to hurt even more. I closed my eyes for what felt like a second, startled out of my own pain by a dull thud somewhere in the cubicle. The stranger looked back at me from the basin where he was washing the blood off his hands. I heard my breath and released it slowly. Fuck, those eyes. I'm here on a class trip, I told him, from the northwest. He was startled. That is far. It is. How was I supposed to explain this? But it became clear that he wasn't going to just let me go without his relevant tests. He thought for a second. It doesn't take all that long, really, he said. I can fast track it, and with the new system in place, I can receive the results within minutes of the imagery. He looked down at my arm. Again. You will need stitches, but I cannot act until I am sure that there's no break. Sorry. I had never been to this place before. How could I possibly get to a hospital? I closed my eyes, dragging my hand over my face. This was not good. Let me just call my teacher. You can give her the number and she can make the call while I get you cleaned up. I gave one of the nurses the number we had all been given for the purposes of this trip, and she disappeared from the room. She came back less than 5 minutes later to tell me that the teacher was on her way. The doctor irrigated my wound, and I found myself almost nauseous from seeing just how deep the laceration was. And then Miss Patel was there, fussing over me as I explained what had happened. The doctor gave her the same story that he had given me, and she sprang into action. The car was already out front. Once again, it was a blur. The doctor, whose name was Johnson, had called ahead to the Jane, as it was known, and indeed, it took under half an hour for me to be seen. I was moved from the x-ray room to the medical bay and left there with Miss Patel, who was on the phone with my father. Only you, kid, he said. Only you can be injured by a book. It was a bookend, Dad, I told him. But you're feeling all right? It's sore, but I'm good. Yes, he said. I'm looking at the images now. What? I exclaimed. How did you... I'm a doctor, Delia. I almost wanted to scream in my frustration. There's nothing broken, so they can stitch you up. I almost wasn't listening at this point. I gave Miss Patel back her phone and waited for this new set of doctors to return with my verdict. Even with the lidocaine, it still hurt. 17 stitches later, I was following Miss Patel out of the trauma unit towards the parking lot. The sun did not feel like anything on my skin, and my clothes felt somehow tighter. I could see things and register them, but their implications meant nothing to me. The school bus was at the top of the hill, idling, but I wasn't going there apparently. Somehow I was seated at the back of Miss Patel's car, my injured arm resting in my lap. You can sleep if you want, poor thing, she was saying. The medication they gave you was really strong, and there was no doubt about it. The car rumbled to life and she put it in reverse. My phone vibrated in my pocket, and I saw that it was Imogen. That it was Imogen. I dropped the call and stuffed the little device back in my pocket. At some point, I felt like my lap was on fire and it looked at some point I felt like my lap was on fire and looked down at it in some kind of daze. It was there that I first took note of the black plastic bag that I was clutching. I had no idea what was inside of it, and I was just too tired to be that curious. So I pushed it aside and slouched in my seat, instantly falling into a deep slumber. The end of chapter 1. Okay, so I will say off the bat that obviously I am going to read the book and I am going to finish it. I love the fact that the pages are short, or that the font is so big that the pages become short. I already enjoyed the different voices, right? The one belongs to the guy, the second one belongs to Delia. I can already tell the difference, right? And I'm hoping, because we can tell obviously that this is gonna be a romance story, I'm hoping that she's gonna give us both perspectives in the story, like she's done with the prologue on chapter 1. I hope that she hops around in that manner. Anyway, if you are curious in this book, or if it's a book that you mean to read or would like to read, please do let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, thank you so very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this first chapter Friday of the reading of the Journals of He by J.D. Kizza. And until next week, thank you so very much for choosing me. Bye now.